Welcome back, everyone, to the final segment for today, which is a panel discussion on cloud and its many facets for an efficient broadcast setup. For this, I welcome on screen the moderator, Nicola Hans, Partner Middle East for Broadcast Solutions, and our panelists for today, Chris Fellows, Senior Manager, Solutions Engineering at Zixi, Faraz Arshad, VP of Technology and Infrastructure, Staffplay, Manish Kapoor, VP of IT and Broadcast MENA, Z Entertainment Middle East, and Jared Timmins, Senior Vice President of Solutions at TVU Networks. A special thank you to Jared, who's come in at 6 a.m., I think, or 6:30 a.m. from the East Coast to join us. Thank you, everyone.
Over to Nicola.
Thank you, Vijaya. Good afternoon and good morning to some of us. I'm happy to be your moderator for this panel. So for the audience, I just want to remind everyone that I'm here to keep the ball rolling and to convey questions that you all may have. This is a panel of experts, so it's really your chance to get answers to the questions you may have. So feel free to ask questions. You've got a chat window that should be on the right side of the screen, and we'll definitely get a chance to share these questions with this panel of cloud professionals that we have. So we have two broadcasters who've been early adopters of cloud deployment, and we'll see what their experience has been both in the OTT and in the on-air world. And we have two vendors that basically have been leading innovation in the cloud space. Now, if we think of it, these past 15 months have been challenging for all of us. We've, if anything, the COVID crisis has shown us that things could be done differently. We've learned to live with masks. We've been reminded that we all have to adapt. We've even learned to work from home. And we've also learned that this past year that there's virtually no limit to our appetite for binge watching series on OTT services. Faraz, this is something that you've been experiencing firsthand at Starzplay. Confinement seems to have given way to a real tsunami of content and content consumption. How did you manage it? So how did you survive this tsunami of OTT content consumption at Starzplay?
Yeah, so absolutely. This tsunami of the content, right? I mean, the consumption. The main thing what we experience is having the right architecture in place, having a distributed edge implementation for all of your audience. That really helps. I mean, when this overall pandemic started, what we noticed that within hours, not even days, we started an increase in the consumption, and we were initially figuring out like, okay, how we're gonna handle this kind of sudden spike. But what we did is like in the whole architecture, like we did foresee some sort of spike due to originals and all. All kind of like new content exclusivity that we usually launch. And so what we did is we started parking our traffic towards different CDN edge pops that we built. And not only on the video side, but the first main thing is how a customer is actually landing to your application or website. And then there he's starting subscribing to the service, and the overall experience by the time he's reaching to the video streaming part. So, luckily we were, part of the whole cloud implementation, and the scalability, the way, it happened, it helps us manage the overall spike that we noticed, during the pandemic. And so initially in the early few hours, we got some, optimization that we had to do. But right after we did those implementation, the scalability, the engagement, and the overall experience, went into a very smooth way. And then we started seeing that, yeah, the overall spike that we are seeing in the region is actually we are able to handle. The main, thing that we did to handle this kind of spike was we implemented our own CDN in 2017, and that actually really helped us accommodating this kind of spike, because yes, we were also using public CDNs, but when we had our direct peering agreements with different ISPs and telcos in the region, we started serving traffic not only from their carriers, international carrier traffic, but also through our IX, internet exchanges, which is a private, traffic. Because not only as an OTT service provider, we were seeing these kind of spikes, but all the ISPs and telcos, they were also getting these kind of hiccups and all the sudden spikes where they were managing the balancing of their capacity that they have on the international side. And that's where exactly where we got benefits out of our own implementation on the CDN part. So for us, they didn't have to worry about the international carrier or the international capacity that they carry for their customers, but all of the Stratsphere traffic was getting served out of IX. And all the major ISPs in the region like STCs, SSLR, Redo, all of them were actually getting served locally. So that actually helped us, maintaining the overall experience of a customer and managed to get this kind of 400 times more streaming traffic that we ever served.
So it sounds like as an OTT, you face the same sort of challenges as telco operators did. Manish, you've been running a couple of linear channels in the cloud for a while now, 5 years, I believe, right? You guys started 5 years ago. How did COVID impact your production and scheduling workflows? Did things change, or it was business as usual?
It's business as usual, thanks to the cloud or thanks to the infrastructure that we have currently in this part of the world. What really happened was we are lucky that what we were running were GEC channels. So they were general entertainment channels. They were not live sports. They were not news channels that we run from here. Being that we had to move the operations for 2 channels, we had to move it on the cloud instantly once the COVID started in 2020. And I think, yes, today the situation is my syndication content or my own production comes on the cloud. My post-production happens somewhere in India. My cloud playout happens somewhere in some part of the world, and my delivery is to US and other places. So yes, I have no setup in the office. There's nobody in the office, and it's all done on the cloud at the moment. And it's smooth, and we are enjoying it.
Fantastic. Jared, since we just mentioned the US, you say that COVID didn't just have all of us work from home or binge watch Netflix and other OTT services. At TVU, you guys believe that COVID has accelerated history, no less. How did that happen?
Certainly. So I think that we probably had 18 to 24 months. So a lot of these workflows that had to emerge overnight because of COVID kicked off, right? So now what we're seeing is really people are finding new ways to do business model experimentation. Revenues are down for normal product that people were delivering, and they have to utilize the cloud. Whether we return all back to normal tomorrow with some magic, switch that comes on or not, people are going to now utilize user-generated content. They're going to utilize the ability to spin up and proliferate content and test different business models and try new things out. And I think really all that COVID did was take away 24 months. The industry had to transition to that. And now we're kind of in that moment, making it happen in real time. And I don't see any reason for any of us to ever go back, especially with the advancements we've been able to provide operators and the advancements we've been able to provide content owners to do things in a different way. We're no longer bound to the old workflows.
So it seems clear that running playout operations in the cloud, facilitated a resilience during COVID. One of the first steps that a lot of broadcasters are looking at is actually to set up a disaster recovery operation. It often starts with that. Chris, what would be your recommendation at Zixi to a broadcaster and their engineering team if they want to port their playout operations to the cloud? What should they focus on first and foremost? Manish, what would be your recommendation for a broadcaster that operates on premise today, that has a traditional big iron type of playout center? What should be their first, points of concern in moving to the cloud?
See, one of the main concerns that everyone brings up is the security on the content, and the second one that is brought up by the users is in terms of disaster recovery. The moment you do it on the cloud. So what we are doing is we've been working with our users right now. In terms of security, what we have focused on in the broadcast business here is we have done our own private cloud at the moment, which means that we have built our own network and our own buckets in multiple networks, and that's where we store our content on. And these are on-prem, these are on the cloud as well, and in multiple data centers across the globe. And that's how we've been sharing. So we have not really moved our content across to the bigger networks right now, but we are studying that, and we are looking at the cost implications of those as well.
Can you hear me now?
So far as I understand, you guys have a slightly different take on this with respect to leveraging some public cloud infrastructure and some own CDN, home-cooked CDNs across the region, right?
Yes, correct. So our side, like, the implementations that we were mainly going with completely hybrid approach, where we didn't want to rely on a certain cloud provider or a certain CDN, let's say. Like our overall focus was mostly to deliver, using the multiple service providers when it comes to video and as well as applications. So and it's not just because that we just wanted to implement this for the sake of implementation, but also given the market that we were in. So apart from GCC, like in North Africa, there are some countries where the bandwidth is really a challenge during peak times, and especially during COVID. Just imagine what could have happened, because when your international carriers are out of capacity, and people are streaming video and overall applications. So what we did, or the approach that we took is, and it's not just because of COVID that we took it. We actually started doing this cloud-based CDN and the overall delivery approach using hybrid model is in 2017, and the whole idea was to have this implementation in place where you have your edge applications along with your video caches sitting on within the ISPs in the region, and your applications are actually going back to your origin only when there is a transactional information that needs to be done, or if something that is not available on the edge compute. So we introduced this edge compute implementation back in 2017, and we actually started looking into really solid benefits when it comes to the overall experience, the engagement of the customer. Because with the shift in with the shift that COVID brought in, the overall usage behavior also got changed. The payment, behavior got changed. The overall, engagement behavior was changed. The consumption pattern was completely, were never anticipated. So what we were also trying to handle is, along with getting the smoother experience for all of our audience, doesn't matter whether you are in a country where there's a bandwidth challenge and all, but we were also focusing on gathering some events so that we can recommend you. Your whatever based on your consumption, we can recommend you the assets that you really want to watch. And we wanted our customers to stream as much as possible that they can, which helps us obviously reducing the overall churn, having a longer life cycle of a customer and things like that. So so this is the approach that we took. I mean, along with the video, the whole idea was to have this implementation really can also cater the application side of it as well. So that, if you are getting a recommendation on your app, you don't have to, go all the way back to your origin getting the recommendation. So we have all of your computed recommendations sitting on the edge, and so that, the experience can be smoother. So these kind of, initiatives that we took to handle this kind of traffic.
Fantastic, Chris. Just the right timing to come back in. So we've just discovered while we were offline that it's not just on-premise or in the cloud, that the world is a lot more complicated. There's a lot more gray around. So at Zixi, how do you? What's your recommendation for a broadcaster? And let's take a traditional broadcaster, a linear channel. If they want to move to the cloud, how do you? What's your advice? What are the first 3 steps from a Zixi perspective?
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now, guys?
Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. I think it's important to think about sort of, utilization when moving to the cloud. I mean, it's not really a matter of kind of a lift and shift, if you like. I don't think you're really going to get the benefits of using the cloud if you do that. I think really the cloud is built for sort of elasticity. And so you need a solution that's going to utilize the CPU and the compute that you have in the cloud. I think the first steps would be to kind of, look at the different vendors that you can host with, and quite often our clients want redundancy across different vendors. and it's quite important for our clients to have a kind of a simple user interface that spans all of those different cloud vendors as well. So sort of looking at the different vendors, looking at the different interfaces that you can choose, and also looking at ways to reduce the compute requirement as well. In our world, obviously we deal in live video streams. It's all about the bandwidth of the video streams and the compute that you use in the clouds, and obviously the compute costs money, especially if you're using sort of big GPU instances. So really, by using a sensible, streaming codec and streaming resolution and protocol, you can certainly reduce that requirement and reduce the bills at the end of the quarter, I think.
I hear you. So I think, in essence, moving to the cloud, it's not just a technology and a workflow switch. You're basically saying that there's a profound change also from a financial standpoint, right? Because traditionally in a broadcast environment, you build a plant, you CapEx, a lot of kit and infrastructure. And then when you move to the cloud, you're in an OpEx model where you need to fine tune all of your costs from a recurring services standpoint. Manoj, was it an easy sale to make to your CFO and to your financial department to actually move away from just buying servers and buying kits to actually paying on a month-by-month basis?
Yes, yes, it was. It was not easy, but the moment you start showing the results in our case was we were able to avoid satellite. As Chris just said, we were able to deliver our channels now over IP. It was very difficult to, for cables and fibers to be laid out during COVID times. We couldn't guarantee those in times. And what we did is we started delivering over IP using different protocols, either ZigSea or SRTs. And we managed to deliver quite a few channels during this COVID period itself. So as a result, now I have a huge portfolio where I deliver my channels over IP to using the cloud. These are saving me a lot of cost in terms of satellite space, uplinking, and even fiber in quite a large extent. I think I'm finding it easier now. My guys are happy. So yes, in terms of cost saving for a broadcaster, I think one of the areas that I had to prove myself was to make the distribution a little more cost effective, and I think we've been able to do that.
And for us, I imagine that with your CDN infrastructure at Starsplay, you have a lot of data coming back from the network, from the way consumers and viewers are interacting with it. How do you use that data? Do you actually use it as KPIs from a financial standpoint? Or it's just technical data and it stays in the technical sphere?
Yeah. So the data that we gather for our user consumption and stuff, I mean, it helps us getting the right set of recommendations in place, having our overall experience, for a user, that how he or she would like to land on our website or our application, and how would he start following his journey to stream something. Search patterns, like it helps us getting the discoverability better for a customer. So if you are a new customer to a service, we know what kind of like age group you are in, and what kind of likes and dislikes that you are in into this, and then how can we help you getting a right recommendation, like a cold recommendation for a new customer, so that he knows, okay, this is where I have to start with, and these are my likes and dislikes. So we had all that data coming in from not only from our CDN but also from our app. But the important thing which I always like to mention is having all the data set. That's really good to have for us to get into right recommendation or whatever your product line is. But having the right governance to handle that data, that is very important as well. How you're going to classify the data, so that I'm gonna these kind of customers that they like to watch this kind of genres, or these kind of customers, they like to binge watch more rather than getting whole series watched. And I have a different set of customers who just wants to watch, let's say, like a dub content and things like that. I mean, there are different use cases around it. But so while you have all of your data coming into your storages or into your databases, the most important thing is to classifying all data in a right way, so it becomes useful for all of your stakeholders in an organization, from a content to marketing perspective. And then once you have that thing done, then you start focusing on overall optimization and some other features that you want to offer to your audience. More important, I'll give you one use case where recommendations that we had in our service. What we were doing, by getting all those events stored in our databases, we were just not recommending you those events, but we were also doing some sort of a pre-caching for those assets that we knew that people will like to watch. And that actually one of the things which helped us, getting over this COVID tsunami, when it comes to streaming sessions, because we were helping customers not to wait for long join times, having less and less error rate in case, for microskirts, there's some issue while fetching an object out of origin. So we actually used all those data sets to optimize the service for all of our customers in a way that they don't feel that I'm under bandwidth or I have a low latency issues or all kind of issues that we're talking about. So having data definitely helps you getting all of your use cases and KPIs achieved, where discovery, recommendation, engagement, performance of the customer of the app, charging behavior of a customer, sentiments analysis like likes and dislikes of every object or every asset that you're carrying in the service, what kind of price point that you want to offer as well. That is something as well. We did some optimization based around. So let's say in Saudi, people are more towards certain packages compared to UAE. People are more towards some other method of payments, because we work with not just credit card and in-apps, but also a lot with telcos as a direct carrier billing service provider. So all these things actually helped us getting a right price point in place. We're getting a right price for that particular package in place for each and every customer. So this is how we utilize all the data that we were getting from the customers.
Listening to you, Faraz, it really sounds as though broadcast engineering is becoming a data scientist's business. Chris, you were saying the other day that when it comes to monitoring channels, it's a lot less about watching a conformity signal and it's a lot more about watching data. What does that mean from a distribution of signal perspective? No more streams in MCRs?
Yeah, I mean, we have this conversation with broadcasters all the time. It's sort of, people still like to see video on a monitor wall, but I think, really, you'd probably get more information from looking at the data of a stream rather than looking at the video. So things like, we're introducing our intelligent data platform at the moment, which basically can look at the RTT, look at the jitter on the network connection, look at all the different information, so different PIDs inside a video stream. That's all information you're not going to be able to get from looking at the monitor wall. And being able to use this data in a constructive way, so putting it through machine learning and artificial intelligence to predict when a stream's in trouble or when a stream might go off air in the next 6 hours or something like that, for example.
So it's clear that there's a lot more to it than just lift and shift. Jared, you seem to consider that the cloud is really opening up new workflows and new practices. What are you seeing in the US? What are you seeing globally from a TDU perspective?
Well, I think Chris and the team have made some great points about how lift and shift is not going to be sufficient, but it's not just the way that we move technology, it's also the way that we set the operational paradigm. It's the way that we handle data, not just to the customers, not just data integrity of the kind of streams, but AI data based on EDL information of when you made a switch between two sources, why you made a switch. There's the lower level of these things that we can do with object recognition, facial recognition, transcription, all of these kind of even scene recognition for sports. AI is moving past the levels that broadcast, I think, even really understands. Like if you look and see what's happening with AI in Google and AI in Amazon and AI that Microsoft is doing, these tool sets that are available to us, we're not even fully exploiting. And I think you talk about the financial element of the cloud, it changes everything, because I'm no longer, coming from systems integration, we had to build facilities for the worst possible scenario, right? Every input maxed on a switcher, on a router, every operator station utilized all the time. Well, now where I can build functional elements and spin those up as needed. And it really is about the art of creating microservices and creating them in a way that works with customers differently than just saying, here's a product that everyone should consume and it is what it is and it doesn't change. We now have the ability to adapt and to build adaptable technologies that solve our customers' problems today, but working with them in relationship allows them to figure out how they're going to revolutionize their business into the future. And so my biggest concern with the cloud is that we're going to try and just take the switchers, the replays, the play out engines exactly as they are, put them in the cloud and try and keep the same operational paradigm where, like Chris was saying, when we don't have multi-viewers, or we're not relying on multi-viewers and people to be able to understand how our systems are performing, the operational burden, that expense, the way that we look at things, the way that we consider what the business choices we're going to be made are going to be informed by a level of data, a level of collaboration, and a level of being able to scale up and scale down and let that stuff breathe in the cloud. That's going to separate us into new kinds of workflows. And I think that we have a brand new template that we can start from, right? And we saw this happen with Apple and Google devices, right? Like, remember the first iPad that came out? The Notes app on the iPad looked like a legal pad, right? I mean, they tried exactly to make it look like in real life. Then they moved on, and now you're able to do things that you could never do on the analog version of that kind of tool set. And I think we have to learn that lesson in broadcast because we're a late adopter into cloud. And we can't go through this whole skeuomorphic phase where we make everything look like it's exactly like the switcher you would have had in your truck, or it's exactly like the switcher you would have had in your facility. It's just on a touch screen now. We have way more cool things that we could be doing to simplify and revolutionize workflows if we could get past the old operator mentality and the old mentality of having to build for worst case, which I think we're largely seeing happen now.
Well, it's clear that the tech is only half of the equation, right? Humans are the other half. So from that standpoint, I mean, how do you build a team for today's broadcaster who actually, for a broadcaster that's actually looking at moving to the cloud, and how do you transition from on-premise to the cloud from a staff and human resources perspective? Manish, what's been your experience with building a team for running a cloud-only, linear playout channel?
So, as Jared just said, yes, today as broadcasters, what we are visualizing now is that it's easier to monitor the channels that have been delivered on the cloud through better streaming and alerts, actually. And that's how we are taking advantage. You don't need people, you don't need the wall of monitors to monitor your channels anymore. And as a broadcaster, what we are realizing is we need to upskill and increase the skills of across the department. So as a broadcaster, what we do is we go department by department wise. We can't really do it in the same single go. So what we do is we have done the distribution part of it right now. We've got a good team there, people who can monitor, people who can understand data, people who understand PIDs and other details. And now we going towards we have a good team with post-production. So basically what I'm saying is over users as well as technical staff, you need to upskill throughout, and you need to change your talent pool. So you can't really change people. You will have to just retrain them and get them to a certain level. And it is an ongoing process for the next 2 years, for sure.
For us, you guys were pretty much a green field when you started, right? So you didn't really have the challenge of converting traditional broadcast engineers to an OTT cloud-based environment. Was it easier?
Yeah. So for us, yeah, absolutely. We were mostly towards cloud even in the beginning. But what we did actually, we just thought, the challenges were not there, like migrating from traditional on-prem towards cloud, but we started actually using all these managed cloud services to get our workflows automated and start, getting some leverage around it. Like, I'll give you one example when it comes to, our content workflow. So, as a normal flow, like when the assets getting ingested into your workflow, there are certain people who clean them and, getting all these like black screens out of the assets and then process them, transport them, and package them as per the overall workflow. So what we did is for these kind of jobs, we actually used managed cloud services, which were completely built on ML concepts, where we were actually leveraging the fact that there are some train engines which were helping us doing these jobs as well. So in this with this kind of implementation, not only we focused more on automations, but what we also did is we started training our staff as well, where they just don't have to work in a traditional manner, but they should be learning how to automate things when it comes to the overall delivery of the object for the production for our audience. So and that actually it really worked out, and then we started enhancing it not just on the basics, but also, let's say, having a kind of automated metadata in place, having sort of skip intros and end credits in place, not having someone physically looking into each and every asset and marking them, these are the time codes, but having ML models to get you those kind of cue points. Having your automated transcripts, having automated subtitles in place, so that a lot of work has been then it became reduced for our content ops to run those kind of workflows, and then you can deliver more and more. Instead of delivering, let's say, 70 or 80 assets per day, you are actually delivering 200, 250 assets per day. So these kind of automations that we did.
And transitioning from a traditional broadcast world to a cloud world, Chris, Jared, you're both veterans from GV. Both of you are working for cloud vendors these days. What's your advice for your colleagues who work for broadcasters? Many broadcasters are like, oh my God, no more SDI. I'm going to have to learn what an RTSP stream is, and what are the challenges? What are the similarities? Chris, what's your take on it?
It's an interesting one. I'm a big lover of video and video signals. I don't want to move away from that, but I feel like we probably are, and I think we're moving into a world where it's all about as we said, data, and it's more about say for example, just to give you a stat, at Zixi we take 3 billion data points every day from the video streams across our platform. Now, you can't get that kind of data coming from traditional SDI in an infrastructure. So it's given us a lot more information. It's given our customers a lot more information, and being able to use that and making streaming a lot more redundant and a lot more interesting for our clients, I think.
Jared, you say there's still some hope that there's still live production and fans have a chance to participate to sports, that actually the cloud is not just about data, that we could actually build some new experiences. What are you guys experimenting with and sort of pushing the envelope there?
I think we are building new experiences. A lot of it I think was forced upon us, but now we've got this tool set, we're using it differently. We're seeing user-generated content really start to kind of take over as its own form of infrastructure. I actually call it user-generated content as infrastructure, because as we start to work with sports teams, there's another tier that you can start to sell with things like our TVU Anywhere app and Party Line, where we're enabling people in the stands to have a closer experience to the players, to be able to high-five them as they're coming out of the locker room, to be able to have stars drop in on box seats and have a conversation with people while they're at the game, being able to make content what we call content bi-directional, so that anyone that's audience can participate in the show in different ways, and that we not just have like voting and polling, but literally being able to have shows upon shows. You look at, I think we've all said for some time, even before COVID, that this thing all ends towards the direction of everything is personalized. I've got all this data. I know what you want to see, when you want to see it, what advertisements that you want, and we're moving towards that. It'll start with large regionalizations where we can take one channel of play out that was going to one region, and I can specialize it by just spinning up an output servers that gives it different graphics or maybe different advertising. So now that we build things in the proper construct, we have this ability to kind of microtize everything and do these individual elements where we're pulling data from people. But also, I think the big change that broadcast needs to be, I think, a little trepidatious about or a little worried about is that the cost of entry for broadcast tools and production tools has shot through the floor. Anyone at home, if you've got good content and you've got a good story, can now produce higher quality content cheaper than you've ever been able to produce. I'm not saying that's a direct competitive thing to the highest level of what we're doing, But it's just like what we all went through with nonlinear editing. You had to be a specialist and you had to be rich to be able to do nonlinear editing 25 years ago, right? And now today, my phone does editing for me based on my preferences that I have. Now, is it as good as what a creative person would do? Never. Does the creative component of it go away? No. But what we say is that it's more about talent than it is skills. Skills can be obfuscated or can be made easier, like production skills of making switches and bringing graphics up. Those skills can be made easier by machine learning and by the cloud. And now talent can shine through, and it doesn't matter where that talent comes from, if it's a creator at home or if it's the largest broadcaster. The technology itself, because of the cloud, is going to become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and easier to use. And that will switch the paradigm of consumption. It already has largely in America, where you see people that are much more interested in watching a 3-hour podcast on a news topic than they are to sit and watch 7-minute sections about stuff. And so these communities are forming, and being able to empower production at the community level that then can be shared and can become something that has millions of views, is what we call community-based or social-based production. And we think there's a lot that's going to change in how we look at the cloud. And again, broadcast shouldn't base what we're doing on broadcast utilization of the cloud. We have to look and see what other financial organizations are doing, what our artificial intelligence companies are doing, what Google and Apple and all of these other companies are doing in the cloud. They're pushing with IT skills the things that we're still trying to do wrapped in a broadcast wrapper, essentially. And we think that there's a specialization there that will protect us. It will not protect our business. We are being disrupted, just like iTunes disrupted CD stores. And so for us to acknowledge that, think differently about how we approach the market and offer new experiences to customers and own the audience and take advantage of it is key, or startups will and large cloud companies will, because they're coming at it from a different angle. So I really challenge all of us that my take is that if we don't treat live production in the cloud like game engine companies treat games and video games in the next 5 years, we have missed the opportunity for broadcast to transition to the next level, because this whole concept of having fixed cameras, fit for purpose gear that we just spin up for one kind of utilization case with a broadcast too many output is not going to sustain the revenues. It's not going to sustain the growth that broadcast companies need moving into the future. This phone right here at scale, right, will be able to do what broadcast cameras do today with swarming technology, hybrid technology, and 5G components in a time frame that, if I said 3 to 5 years, everyone think I was crazy, but I'm telling you, I'll stand on that. 3 to 5 years, we won't recognize what's happening in broadcast. We won't recognize what's happening with automated production, where machine learning is doing a lot of this. If you look at and compare ourselves to things like deep fakes and all of the other processing capabilities in machine learning that's happening outside of our industry, our aspirations aren't out of bounds. Right? And we should be pushing the envelope, because now is our time for disruption. Now is our time to reinvent what it means for people to consume and to contribute to content. And so that's the way we look at it, TVU. It's a new day, and we have new tool sets, and we should be able to use them for what they're worth instead of trying to copy yesterday in pursuit of tomorrow.
So Manish, as a broadcaster with 140 channels plus of linear content, yes, how do you react to that? Is the future community TV and webcasts over the counter?
I'm sure what Jared is saying does make a lot of sense here. In terms of, but when I say a channel normally has an 8-hour new content. In terms of community TV, you can build content in this way for 1 hour or 2 hours. But still, there's a huge amount of content that still gets made in production houses, and it needs to be done in certain formats. So I think, yes, we are looking at, we have automated the complete process. Now, what COVID did bring us to it, we were not ready to go on the cloud instantly, but what COVID did bring us to a point where we had to move a complete operation, a complete workflow on the cloud for all these channels. As a result, today, all my post-production staff now sits at their own residence. And I have content which is new, which cannot be shared, and they work on this content and create promos now from home. Are they going to come back to my office, to my setup again? No. My post-production staff now will always work from home. And that's what we're reaching a point now. In fact, what we plan to do is give them an additional storage box or a DRM box at their residence so that content can be pushed there, and they have a scale, they have a timetable or something where they can work and create promos. So this stuff is not coming back. It's the post-production part of it. In terms of producers, yes, again, they are also operating from home right now. So yes, our movement towards the cloud was quite swift in the last 2 years. We were not totally on the cloud at all. And that has really, we went through a certain hiccups there, but I think we're much more stable right now.
I hear you. So basically, no chance for your production guys to, your editing crews
absolutely
to come
not
back to the office?
They find it much easier.
They're going to stay home?
They're finding it much easier.
Question, actually. Jared was mentioning earlier AI and how that's changing a lot of production. Practically, who's really using that? I mean, Chris mentioned AI with respect to being able to automatically detect when a signal is going to go off air. Faraz, you mentioned that you're using AI for recommendation. Practically, Jared, where are people really using AI today? I mean, the cognitive services part, is it just about analyzing the bits, or is it really about determining whether it's a fake, or what are you seeing in the industry?
I think data is king, right? We used to say content is king, but data in our content in context is what makes the money. It's what pays the bills, right? So just content standalone without the data is not as valuable, and I think you see this. From any major network all the way out to startup companies right now that are utilizing our AI technology to do facial recognition, object recognition, scene detection, audio detection, and to be able to search on their content and say, it used to be I had to know the keywords. Now I can say, when did the leader of this country who was wearing this color tie say hydroxychloroquine in the last 2 weeks? Boom, I instantaneously have the transcription of that moment in time that I can now capture, cut from home to Manish's perspective, from what he's saying, and distribute out to the website, cut into a package that I need to cut into. All that stuff exists today. We're doing content moderation where we're looking for things like violence detection, nudity detection, facial detection that that maybe might be someone who's not authorized to be on shows, and being able to condition it that way. So those things are already happening. If you look at some of the stuff that's happening with automated clipping, right? A lot of large events are having automated editing. Now, would I say it's as good and creative as someone who's, been doing it for years? Not at all. But is it good enough to do catch up to live when you join a sporting event in progress, and it gives you a customized clip of here's everything that got us to this point in the broadcast go? That exists right now and is utilized, I would say, very broadly. So all of the pieces are there. I think what's largely been the limiting factor for AI to explode in broadcast is the broadcast systems don't have that translation tool. They're not able to either export their data in a way that can be the legacy systems can be taken advantage of, and they're certainly not able to take decisioning and data from AI environments and utilize that. We've done a lot of even SCUDdy conversion to try and utilize SCUDdy as a way to basically take data and be able to put that information into a traditional stream. And so I think we're just at the beginning of this, but I wouldn't, one of the things I think I've always challenged people to go look at is kind of how modern CG oriented movies are creating content, like The Lion King, that new version of The Lion King that got done a few years ago. That was done and built as a game engine. And they didn't have any cameras. They had people with VR goggles and 3-axis accelerometer sensors that looked like cameras, shooting that entire show, doing it in a completely different way. And so all of that was AI inspired and AI produced and AI assisted. And so there's a lot of examples outside of broadcast that I think are directly applicable to of how companies are pushing the boundaries for this, and billions of dollars are being invested into it that we don't have to create as broadcast. We can just take advantage of if we can make sure the systems can support that and speak that language.
Yeah.
Manish, your take on that as a broadcaster, linear.
I'm all excited, to move in this direction. And I think, yes, the journey has already started about a year back or 2 years back. And I think we will be there, what Jared says, in the next year or so. In terms of data points, in terms of data, we broadcasters are very interested in the distribution part of the business because that's where our revenues are linked for linear channels. And I think that's where we are monitoring our bandwidths very closely. Our deliveries mechanisms are being monitored, and that's where some of the new products are really helping us in terms of keeping an eye on the costs and the bandwidths, and to recognize a problem a little early in the whole business. That is getting very exciting. So yes, a completely different skill sets that are required, and I don't think there are many right now. And we are doing it on job training to people to understand these aspects of the cloud business now.
So Chris, for a broadcaster that wants to, let's go back to our initial question before the audio dropped off. For a broadcaster that wants to bridge to the cloud, what's the advice? What are the things people should be focusing on? We saw that there's a human challenge with respect to engineering, but from a technology standpoint, what's the and without reinventing the wheel, we're still trying to do some linear channels there. What's the advice that you guys have to succeed?
Well, I think one of the key points that we haven't touched on is, we did touch on it a little bit, but it's around monitoring, really. I mean, if you're moving equipment to the cloud, obviously there's a limitation on monitoring. You can't just plug in an SDI cable to your multi-viewer and monitor that. So you need somehow to monitor those linear streams that are coming out from the cloud, and also monitor the software that's also in the cloud as well. So, that's that's the challenge that we help clients overcome, and you need a decent control plane to be able to do that. And also you kind of want to limit the number of systems that you're using as well. I think Manish said that he's sending both SRT and Zixi streams, so you want a single platform to be able to monitor those. You're not going to want two monitoring planes and two control planes to monitor two separate systems. So I think one of the major points is really to think about installing a system that can utilize everything without having to reinvent new monitoring solutions, and have individual monitoring solutions for individual systems.
So with that in mind, we're going to have to wrap up, but I've got a question for all of you. Is none of us would have imagined what last year would look like, right? I mean, we've gone through a pretty massive trauma for our societies, for our personal lives. Let's project ourselves in a year from now. Let's be optimistic. The vaccines are working. What will the cloud and what will broadcasting the cloud look like, and what will have changed compared to today, if anything? Jared.
I think you'll see the way that people go about building their business models and testing their business models largely change. Now we can kind of walk and chew gum at the same time. We've got our legacy business supported, right? I mean, we have the linear channels that are going out. We know how to maximize that revenue, but now we have to look and say, well, the landscape's changing. How do we use tools, and how do we partner with people in a different way that allow us to maximize what's ahead of us? So I think things will continue to change at the pace they've been changing in COVID over the next year. I'll be really glad to be able to get back on an airplane again and have some good steak dinners with clients again. But I think largely, the way that we approach the market will be micro app based, and will be fit for function instead of fit for purpose, and will be talent based instead of skill based. And I think what we're seeing now is this ability to go, for instance, in sports environments, to give a cloud-based production tool set to a team, and allow them to create content that allows people to join the practice, allows people to see other elements of the game that they're able to sponsor and make money that they would have never have made or thought to make 2 years ago. And this allows them to stabilize the losses they had from COVID. But then what you're finding is that the consumer uptick and response to it is so good that more of that money will, I think, continue to go to these more interactive experiences. And we can reinvent this. And we have the template now. We have the skills. We have the ability to understand true cloud environments with microservices. And we can condition what we call micro apps to the consumer. So I don't have to have everyone learn how to use the switcher the same way. When we work with esports companies, you can control our switching platform with a PlayStation 5 remote, utilizing all of the things that are inside of that $59 device as a different man-to-machine interface. And so I'm not saying we throw away all of the old, but I'm saying there's a whole new world for us to explore. And if we can explore it in a smart, data-centric way, we can reinvent these businesses and maximize revenue for any organization, whether it's sports, whether it's play out, whether it's OTT. All of those things are kind of coming together, and we now have a new set of tool sets and new expertise to go explore that with vendors who want to work that way and want to solve problems and figure out this new world together. So that's the way I see it's going to happen.
Faraz, OTT in a year from now.
Well, one thing definitely which I'm already seeing is the digitization of traditional broadcast has started to transform. With this shift that we have seen, the people that we used to talk, I mean, they were not very open towards cloud and all these kind of digitalization aspects, but now I'm actually seeing them. Some of them have already done it, some of them they are in the middle of it. And this will enable and or address, the data points that, we were just talking about, how do we bridge them so that, we can get more benefits out of machine learning or AI standpoints where, we can use these models to help us predicting things along with the content. Obviously, content is definitely a king, but, I would say data is actually helping us monetizing that content in a right way. And so this digitization will actually, transform the whole world, or all the broadcasters in a way that, they'll be more prepared when it comes to these kind of situations in the future, God forbid. But in case something, comes up, no one has to worry about the traditional setups. What do we have? I mean, why do we have these kind of bottlenecks and all these kind of things? The only thing which we all have to focus now, along with this whole transition, what are the cost, impacts around it? Because some of the transformations are really expensive. So I would imagine that all these cloud providers and all these, public service providers, they're also working on some specialized cost elements which support these broadcasters to transform as fast as possible. And because, at the beginning, it might be very cheap, but at a certain point, it will become to a point where, it will start costing these broadcasters a lot. And that's where I think we all need to focus as well, along with this all transformation that is happening.
Clear. Chris, from a Zixi perspective, any way of helping broadcasters limit their costs in the coming year?
Well, it's interesting, when we take, obviously when we take streams up to the cloud, and we've got the stream already in the cloud. There's a lot of ways broadcasters can utilize that. Obviously they can distribute that out to different head ends or send it to different clients, and being able to do that really changes from sort of, from days to set up a stream to, minutes to set up a stream. So, to do that is very simple from the cloud, and also opening up other revenue paths. Like, if you want to take that stream and send it out as, OTT or send it onto a CDN, you can utilize the cloud to be able to do that. And it gives you the distribution points. And also you're not limited on the hardware that you have in your facility or the ISP bandwidth that you've got coming to your facility. So, we see all this expanding, and we see that, clients are a lot braver now with pop-up channels, I think. So, they could pop up streams and test streams out and try new things with streams that that maybe they weren't as brave with in the past. So yeah, I think lots of revenue paths when you get the streams up into the cloud, and certainly lots of ways that we can help our clients there.
So many streams in the cloud and production teams at home. What are the 365 days coming up looking like?
As I see it, there's no way any of the broadcasters going back to the pre-COVID days at all. So the movement has happened, the journey has started. We don't know what the final goal might be, or whether, as Faraz said, it might be a hybrid model, it might be a private model or a public model. We don't know the end point. But what we do know is the number of playouts that we do of channels will get reduced. And over a journey of when you're having a stream, you'll be able to change commercials, you'll be able to change programs on the way, and then distribute it to wherever you want it to. I think those kind of activities will really increase in the next coming months. We would now not play out a new channel just because there is a requirement in a new place, but we would try to use one of the channels, use the stream, and then change the content on the road itself, so to say, on the stream itself. I think those kind of activities will happen as we take it further, and these are very exciting times for a broadcaster now. I must say that, yeah.
So if anything, these last 12 months have shown that the cloud is really about resiliency. Let's see if the next 12 months show us that it's about flexibility. And with a little chance, we'll get an opportunity to actually do the same roundtable in a year from now, but face to face, with a few less issues with respect to audio. Guys, thank you very much for your time. I hope the short hour gave our audience a chance to have a better understanding of what happened during this COVID tunnel, and that there's a silver lining to actually importing broadcast operations to the cloud. Vijaya, over to you.
Okay, a very big thank you to all of you for being part of this panel discussion. Nicola, beautifully moderated. Thank you very much to Chris, Faraz, Manish, and Jared for participating in this panel discussion. I see a lot of questions coming up, some of them on chat, some of them coming on our Twitter account. Unfortunately, we were not able to field more questions, but thank you so much. And a big thank you to also our sponsors, Ross, TVU Networks, White Peak Solutions, Zixi, Pebble, and Quib. Thank you very much to all of you once again for being part of this discussion. And we hope to see everyone back again tomorrow at 1:25 p.m.